The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, in last month's budget, the government laid down its cards. It laid down a clearly laid out plan for New Zealand's future. We are firmly focused on meeting and beating the challenges laid in front of this country over the last few years and getting New Zealand on a path to much stronger growth. The budget was another firm step on that path. Firstly, it's about balancing the books. It's about getting back into surplus in 2014. It's about keeping interest rates lower than Labor over the cycle. No surprise there, because Labor doesn't think interest rates are important for economic growth. That's what we learned this afternoon in question time. Ensures a competitive exchange rate over time, which is important for exporters and important for New Zealanders. So it's about balancing the books first of all. Secondly, it's about doing it by controlling expenditure and not adding taxes. And that's very important. New Zealand finally has a tax system, Mr Speaker, that encourages hard work and savings. 3/4 of New Zealanders now have a top marginal tax rate in this country of 17.5 cents. The top rate of 33 cents in the dollar is designed to encourage skilled workers, and I don't mean encourage them to leave the country like Labor did over the last 9 years. And 28 cents company tax rate is also designed to encourage New Zealand businesses. It's crucial that we do not sacrifice that, so we've controlled the urge of the opposition parties to add to the tax base and track a path to surplus while maintaining our competitive tax system. Thirdly, it's about savings, Mr Speaker. Firstly, national savings. KiwiSaver has been put on a much more sound footing. The reality is that when you are borrowing more than $1 billion a year to place that money into a deposit account, that does not add to savings. Mr Speaker, we've changed that, and over time greater employment contributions and employee contributions will add to national savings, and more importantly, cutting the deficit increases government savings and increases national savings. And in terms of saving, it's also about having something to invest in. We need something more than finance companies for New Zealanders to invest in, so we have created the mixed ownership model, Mr Speaker, which will not only provide opportunities to invest in, but also provide opportunities for these great Kiwi companies to grow, Mr Speaker. So that's three things. Fourthly, it's about Christchurch, and that's crucially important. The rebuild of Christchurch, $5.5 billion to help Christchurch get back on its feet. And that is a major commitment by this government to the people of Christchurch, and rightly so. Fifthly, Mr Speaker, the budget is about infrastructure, and so much infrastructure. We're investing hugely in New Zealand's future, $1 billion in this budget alone for ultra-fast broadband, which will be transformative for this country. And the ultra-fast broadband and the rural broadband initiative alongside each other will actually take this country forward like no other government program, he said, slightly selfishly. $1 billion a year or more on the roads is very important as well. $4.6 billion turnaround plan for KiwiRail. We don't hear the opposition much on that, but that is a massive investment this country is making in its future through this government, and also a massive investment on commuter rail in Auckland and Wellington, Mr Speaker. Huge amounts on infrastructure, thousands of jobs, Mr Speaker, from that infrastructure, and most importantly, as we come out and get the faster growth, we won't have the infrastructure blockages we've had historically when recessions come right. And Mr Speaker, I think it's important to note that this is the first time, I think, in living memory anyway, that any government has been able to maintain an infrastructure program of this size in tough economic times. And I think it's one of the unsung stories of this government that we have been able to do that, and people will look back and say they invested in New Zealand's future. At the time it would have been far easier to just snap up the chequebook and put it away, Mr Speaker. And sixthly, this budget is about investing in education and skills, Mr Speaker. We are doing huge amounts in that area. Anne has talked about what's happening in the preschool and also the schools sector. And I think the national standards are another unsung story of this government, which is going to see us in great stead in the future. But also in the tertiary area, record numbers of tertiary places, Mr Speaker. Record numbers of graduates. We're meeting the demand, and more importantly, we're demanding results. Now, the previous government used to be very good at tipping the money in the front end. They were very good at that. They get the bucket out and they throw the money in the front. It was like throwing the money in the fire, and they wouldn't actually worry too much about accountability at the back end. We are into accountability at the back end, Mr Speaker. We make sure the accountability is there. We don't have any phantom industry trainees. We're getting rid of phantom industry trainees. They go on about industry training. In 2008-2009, 44% of the people officially receiving industry training didn't get any credits whatsoever. Any credits whatsoever. They didn't actually earn a credit. They weren't really industry trainees, they were phantom trainees, Mr Speaker. That's what they were. They were phantom trainees courtesy of the Labour Party, Mr Speaker. And then, of course, there are other areas that weren't directly addressed in the budget. Areas like innovation and trade, where we're putting a number of things in a steady progress forward. We have investments in tourism, investments in export education. Regulatory reform continues, Mr Speaker, and also one that upsets the member for trade unions over there, Mr Robertson. We're getting more productivity out of the public sector, Mr Speaker, which is very important given how much money, again, Labor poured in the front over the last 9 years and didn't do anything about it, checking for accountability, Mr Speaker. And the future is looking very positive. The future is now looking very positive. We have actually in this country the best terms of trade in 37 years, and that's crucially important. It's not government generated, but it is crucially important that we have that opportunity to grow exports, Mr Speaker, at a time when the government is focusing on exports. We also have one of the best interest rate tracks in living memory. We have massive investments, as I said, going forward in infrastructure and the Christchurch rebuild. And yes, we've even got the Rugby World Cup between now and the end of the year. So things are looking up, Mr Speaker. There are those to the left of us who think we should spend lots of dough. And that's their solution to all the problems. In fact, they haven't got many solutions. Do you know what their really big ideas are for the upcoming election? Let me guess. R&D tax credits. Whoa, that's a hoary old number, isn't it? I don't know. It's a lot more money than they think, actually. But that's their new solution. 3 years in opposition, let's roll out an old game, R&D tax credit. And their other suggestion, skills training. More phantom trainees, Mr Speaker. They want to get out there and shovel more money in the front end again. Well, it worked effectively across the first decade of this millennium. Well, it didn't, and it wouldn't work effectively now. And it just goes to show how bankrupt they are of ideas if all they can do is come out and rerun their 2008 election policies, which we all know were hugely successful that time around. So, Mr Speaker, they've opposed every single spending change that this government has actually put forward. They've opposed the KiwiSaver changes. They've opposed the mixed ownership model. You take all that out of the budget, then suddenly they're looking at a very massive deficit, and they don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about that, Mr Speaker, because they have no idea how they will fill that gap. So all they are doing is sitting there and criticising the government, saying somehow the government hasn't got a plan when it has this absolutely comprehensive plan for New Zealand's future, Mr Speaker. And the dear old Labour Party is sat there looking from the sidelines, bereft of ideas, looking to basically run things back to 2008. They want to put up personal taxes again, Mr Speaker. There's a party that supposedly goes on about skills training, but they want to put up personal taxes for higher skilled workers. They want to restart the immigration to Australia. That's their big plan. They also want to take away all the changes that Nick Smith's made to ACC to bring ACC under control. And that's a fantastic story of this government improving the outcome for ACC. And Labor don't know what happened. They don't know how they got into the big hole financially. They still think it didn't happen. Hipkins there before saying it never happened. Wasn't sure what happened. We've, in the meantime, we've sorted it out and got it out of the hole again, and they're still wondering what the hell happened. What the hell happened, Mr Speaker? That's the trouble with this crowd. They are completely dumbstruck on the other side of the House. They have no idea what to do except to rerun their 2008 campaign. So, Mr Speaker, this budget balances the books, does it by controlling expenditure, keeps the tax system that encourages hard work and savings, actually focuses on actual savings rather than just borrowing to make ourselves feel good by putting it in another account. It's about Christchurch, the rebuild of Christchurch. It's about infrastructure, huge amounts of infrastructure, and it's about investing in education and skills, Mr Speaker. It is a strong plan for sustained real growth for this economy. New Zealanders will support it. New Zealanders are supporting it, and that's because they see this government has a plan to help them get ahead and have the brighter future they deserve, Mr Speaker. Thank you.
I call William Seo.
Mr Speaker, I want to congratulate that Speaker because